Following Hieronymous's advice, I use TrackScent as I make my way through Wolf Hall. Fortunately, there aren't a lot of other people living in the halls over the summer, and there aren't a lot of new smells. There's an overwhelming odor of old socks, but underneath that, there's a scent of the freshest, earthiest pine that I've ever smelled in my life. There's something strange about it, something unfamiliar, and I know at once that it can only be Daniel. I follow it to the door and knock slowly. I hadn't prepared myself for what I was going to say or how I was going to say it. Was I supposed to introduce myself formally or keep things casual from one student to another? Fortunately, I don't have to think on it for long as a boy opens up the door. He's slightly shorter than me, with dark green hair and deep brown skin. His chin moves as he literally looks me up and down, and his face adopts an expression of boredom. What do you want? I open my mouth and shut it again, almost too stunned to even speak. Daniel Callister? Yeah? He crosses his arms over his chest and leans in the doorway. What? I can't help but gape at him. Is this the way he behaves around Hieronymus too? My name is Tori, I tell him as genially as I can manage. Has Professor Grabiner explained who I am? Oh. Yeah. Daniel shrugs. Yeah, you're the girl who's supposed to show me around and stuff since he's busy with classes. I honestly don't know what to say to him. Yeah, I manage at length. Yeah, did he tell you anything about me? No, Daniel says. What's your name? I blink at him. I had just told him my name. I couldn't imagine that Hieronymus wouldn't mention who I was, and it seemed more than possible that he had explained everything, and Daniel simply wasn't paying attention. Then again, maybe he didn't want Daniel knowing that we were married. I couldn't imagine why, but it was something that I could ask him later. Can I come in? I ask at length. There are some things I'd like to talk to you about. Daniel just stands back and lets me in, and I shut the door behind me as he sits down on his bed. You have the room all to yourself? I ask as I glance around. My parents didn't want me sharing. He shrugs. Easier to keep my identity a secret, I guess. He fixes me with a stone-cold stare. But since Grabiner sent you to look after me, you already know all about that, don't you? I hesitate before I nod my head. I do. Out of respect for your family, I will refer to you only by your chosen name, Daniel Callister, and I will not divulge your secret to anyone. Okay. He shrugs again. So I guess if you're looking after me, you're from a noble family too? I thought they didn't have noble families in America. My situation is a bit complicated, I say quickly, shifting the topic to get it off of me. But it seems you have been here a few weeks, at least. I trust that Professor Grabiner has made sure you had a smooth transition into your new life here? He shrugs. Again. It's been okay. Has anyone else seen you talking to him? I ask. I hadn't noticed, but then again, I had been too involved in making sure that Hieronymus wasn't paying attention to my independent study with Jason to worry about what he had been up to. I don't think so, Daniel says as he shakes his head. He always comes when people aren't around. He told me not to approach him unless it was an emergency. That's good, I reply. Professor Grabiner has a bit of a reputation around the school. I'm sure you are going to hear more than a rumor or two about him, but just know that you don't want to get on his bad side. Yeah. Daniel leans back as he clasps his hands behind his head. I've heard the rumors. I know all about why he is the way he is. You do? I ask. Which rumors had he heard? The ones about me? So, what have you been hearing? He eyes me suspiciously. I actually know the real story behind what happened and why he's here. I don't think I should be sharing it with you. He's not talking about you, Tori. He's talking about her. I think I can actually hear my heart beating in my chest, and the words escape my lips without me consciously being aware of them. Fortunately for you, I also know the real story about what happened, so I think it's probably better if you run by me what you heard, so I make sure that you do know what really happened. There's rumors that he fled England after he killed someone in a duel, and those clearly aren't true, Daniel says, and I nod my head. He did kill someone, though. I blink at him. What? No, he didn't kill her. He says he might as well have, Daniel continues. For once, he actually seems interested in what he was saying. He brought his girlfriend, a wild seed, into the other world because he wanted to show off how he knew how to travel the high roads, which are generally forbidden to families without noble status. But she was a kid. Her magic wasn't advanced enough, and she wasn't a member of a royal family, so the old bargains didn't apply to her. Her soul was devoured right in front of him. As the story goes, he came back to England, badly wounded, with only his lover's empty body in his arms. I stare at him. The spit in my throat had suddenly gone dry. It was a big scandal, Daniel recalls. No one knows how he survived. He never said. But there was always the risk that someone would investigate it, and so the royal families all worked together to cover up her disappearance. They ordered him to keep quiet and tell no one about what really happened. He got mad, of course, and left England immediately. Some families think that they got into an argument in the other world and he killed her in a quarrel. After all, magic does flow more freely there, and all it takes is one stray thought, one wrong spell. His voice trails off and he suddenly looks pensive. And you've discussed this with him? I'm not sure how I even managed to get the words out. Yeah, he said that I'm a lot like he was when he was younger, Daniel says reflectively. He didn't like how many rules there were either. He didn't like how no one would answer his questions, how he was simply brushed aside until they were ready for him to serve their purpose. He says that we're a lot alike, and that might be true. That's why you're here, I guess. He says that I stir up too many old memories that he'd prefer not to remember. The image of a young, bloody Hieronymous carrying a young girl's dead body down a long, winding trail comes unbidden to my mind. The love and the loss that we feel when we are young may be the deepest and forever mark our fates, Daniel says suddenly. That's what he told me. Do you believe that to be true, Tori? I blush as I remember the argument I had with Hieronymous after our battle with Damien, after I learned that he had scheduled the severance. I had told him that I was never going to be able to get over him, especially after what had just happened to me. I didn't think he remembered much of our conversation, considering the end of it led to me dramatically jumping out of a window, but perhaps he remembered more than he let on. Perhaps it colored every interaction that he's had with me up until this point, and I just didn't realize it. I think it would be best if he didn't know we had this conversation, I say after a moment. But you do know the truth about what really happened. I can tell you quite definitively that no one else here does, aside from Professor Potsdam. Don't mention what happened to him under any circumstances, or you're not going to be heading home in one piece. I don't need to promise you that. Yeah, Professor Grabiner has already threatened me, Daniel says. He shrugs again, and for some reason the world feels at least it's taken a step towards being back to normal. So why did he choose you to look after me? How are you connected to his family? That's a story for another time, I say as I glance around the room. What were you doing in here? Professor Grabiner told me not to leave the room until you came to greet me, Daniel explains. So I've just been sitting here, waiting. I blink at him. He seemed off, but at least he was obedient. So now that I'm here, what would you like to do? Do you want to go to the library? The bus comes on Saturday. We could go to the mall. Have you ever been to a mall? No, but it sounds like I guess it could be fun. He shrugs again, and I almost wonder if it was like a nervous tic of some sort, considering how often he did it. So what would you like to do now? I ask. He moves over to his desk where a book of black magic is sitting open to a page talking about inscription spells. I was just studying, he says. Can I finish reading this and get to whatever tasks Professor Grabiner has assigned for me later? Your studies and your happiness are of chief importance to me, I tell him. So if you want to do something outside of the curriculum that Professor Grabiner has planned for you, that's totally okay by me. Huh. He looks at me like he's not sure how to feel about this. Okay. I'll drop by later, I say smoothly. Take good notes. I want to see what you've learned, and then we can practice inscription spells in the dungeons later, okay? Okay. I shut the door behind me and step out into the hallway. The afternoon sun is shining through the glass windows, illuminating the entire hallway, but for some reason it still feels dark to me. I quickly transport back to Hieronymous's room and head inside, pleased to see that he's not there. I still can't get the image of young Hieronymus out of my mind. I had never really taken the time to think about how Hieronymus had escaped, or the aftermath of what had happened. How did he survive? Did he leave the other world himself, or did he just leave her body there? Who was the first person he told about what had happened? How long did it take for him to leave England? Why did he really leave? Everything Daniel said seemed to fill in most of the answers to the questions I never thought to ask. Because honestly, why would I ask? Why would I want to know the answers? It had happened in the past. Their relationship had no bearing on ours. Except that it did. I hadn't had any romantic entanglements before Hieronymus, and he only had one, but it was that one that seemed to cast a shadow over his entire life story. If he hadn't been experimenting with his madness and I hadn't accidentally walked in and intervened, he would still be sitting here in this room, mourning her loss even now. He was with me now, and he was happy, but that wasn't going to make him forget what had happened in the past. And, as he told Daniel, looking at him brought back bad memories of everything that he had run away from. I hesitate for a moment as I linger on something Daniel had said. Had her soul really been taken from her, or had Hieronymus accidentally killed her in a quarrel? I knew, maybe better than anyone, how angry he could get. I remember when he had pinned me to a wall and threatened to lock me in the dungeons for a year after he thought I was the one who spread rumors of our marriage around the school my first year. I remember when I lost my memories my second year and he had thrown me back into a wall and I had hit my head. I had cried so hard. My roommates had to get Professor Potsdam involved, and even then I had sobbed in her office like a child for longer than I cared to admit to. Hieronymus could lose his temper when he was angry, and though he said he was working on it, and it appeared to be getting better, what was it like 12 years ago? Even if he did kill her, and he admitted to it, there was no way his father would risk the family reputation and hold him accountable for his actions. No, they would cover it up, and I could only imagine Hieronymus's self-righteous fury of realizing that he was going to have to live every day of the rest of his life secretly harboring his sins without atoning for them. So, did he kill her? Or was he just not strong enough to protect her? That was the question, but would Hieronymus give me an honest answer if I asked? I take a moment to focus on myself. I feel hollow and empty. I can feel my heart beating in my ears, but aside from that, my fingers feel numb. I close my fists and release them. I had two options right now. I could either tell Hieronymus what we talked about and let him confirm things for himself, or I could try to push this out of my mind and forget what I had learned. It doesn't take me more than a moment before I decide to do the latter. I don't want to bring it up. I don't want to know the truth, and moreover, I don't want to watch him miss her. As much as I hated to admit it, I was jealous. I was jealous that he loved a girl that had died 12 years ago more than he loved me. Maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't, but that insecurity was there, and trying to confront it wouldn't ease that ache. No, the only thing that I could do was to focus on the future in front of me. When Hieronymus told me he loved me, I had to believe him. I did believe him, which made that part a bit easier, but I had to stop asking myself if he still loved her more. I shake my head and decide to cut Daniel's self-study short. I had to stop thinking about this. If I kept dwelling on the past, he would end up loving 2 ghosts instead of just 1.